What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall. We got another NBA draft prospect breakdown of the NCAA Tournament. Here we're in the Midwest region. Kendall, some big names in this region. I think it's a region that a lot of people hope and expect to see some fireworks in regards to teams that may make runs in this one. I think this is a region that a lot of people are paying attention to.
Yeah, it helps when you have the projected number one pick, in the region. Certainly you're going to catch some eyeballs, but there's a lot of depth when it comes to draft prospects in this region. I'm really excited to talk about some of the prospects I'm going to talk about. I'm excited to hear what you have to say, as well as about some of your guys.
Yeah, so let's get it going, man. Let's get to the first guy, and of course, we gotta talk about Cade Cunningham. So he's the projected number one overall pick. I think that almost anything that happens in this tournament, I think that he's safe to probably stay at number one. Though I guess you never really know what will happen based on who gets the lottery or what a certain GM may like a different player. But to me, Cade Cunningham, man, it's a complete package. It's rare to see a guy 6'6", 6'7", true point guard skills. Just an elite feel for the game. I think that's probably one of the things. We could talk about his skill level, his scoring ability, his passing ability, but he just, for a guy who's a 18-year-old freshman, he just plays like he's a veteran. He plays like he's a 4-year senior. He's shown the clutch ability, hit some big shots this year. Every time you think that maybe there's a weakness here or there that may show itself, he seems like he always seems to throw that out the way. You think, oh, can he shoot? And then he hits some big threes. So, okay, but, is he got that killer instinct? And then he gets game-winning shots. However, can he take over? We've seen him go for 38 and 39. I mean, it's really, he's just a phenomenal player. I mean, if there's anything you say, maybe he's not an elite athlete. But, again, when you have the feel for the game this kid has, it's just special. Loves to compete. I love that he is a team player, even though he's obviously the best player in Oklahoma State. I love that it seems like that whole team is improved. And it has been about him just trying to go off every night and get the most points. He gets all his teammates involved. They run the floor because they know he's gonna get them open looks. Cade Cunningham, a real special talent. Certainly the favorite to be the number one overall pick. And he's gonna be an important player to watch in this tournament.
Yeah, Cunningham is such a high IQ basketball player. Some of the little things he does on both ends of the court are just, if you see the fascinating player to watch, if you just watch Cade Cunningham's movements on the court and you just focus on him, you'll see how he thinks the game plays ahead of everybody else. And it's truly incredible to watch sometimes. And like you mentioned, I mean, just it's very little weaknesses. He went to a place at Oklahoma State where, he was going to have to be challenged, to be a number one option, something that not just a number one option, but, the primary and I would say only option, but the guy that's going to get a lot of the scoring load, and people weren't sure about that choice. I wasn't sure about that choice. We did a video early on talking about maybe he didn't make the best choice, but he's certainly answered those questions in Big 12 play. And typically freshmen, they start off great in non-conference, and then they tail off a little bit. Even Jalen Suggs has played great, but he's not hasn't he's kind of came a little bit back down to earth in West Coast Conference play. Cade Cunningham's game has risen, in Big 12 play. So that's something that's very rare for a one and done prospect. So yeah, it seems like a no brainer that if he can just stay healthy and get to June, that he's gonna be the number one pick in the draft.
Oklahoma State, I think, got a pretty interesting draw. I think you're going to talk about some of the guys they may be playing in the future. It would be interesting to see if we are able to get him going on a long run here. Who would you guys, your player, to look at first?
Yeah, so it's funny. When we were watching, if you watch the selection show, Seth Davis shouted out, potential matchup between Cade Cunningham and Dosunmu, someone we may be talking about later in this video. But to me, when I saw the bracket, I circled Cade Cunningham versus Jaden Springer. Obviously, I look at a lot of these things from a high school basketball, recruiting kind of lens, and Jaden Springer. This is a draft, obviously this is a recruiting class deep with guards, high level guards, and Springer was in that elite class along with Jalen Green, and Jalen Suggs, and Jaden Springer was right there with those guys. Not the most athletic of the group, not the highest skill level of the group, but what you love about Springer is he brings a toughness about him, that it's immediately going to translate to the NBA level. He's really strong, good size at the guard position. You know, uh, not and when I say he's not doesn't have a high skill level, it's not to say that he doesn't have game. He's not flashy. He's not a flashy player. But he can get buckets. He's had games where he's had 20 plus points at Tennessee, but he doesn't do it in the flashiest manner. Think about a Marcus Smart or a Chauncey Billups kind of guard. He's in that mold, and I think Jaden Springer is being very underrated because he's not the flashiest or most athletic prospect, but I'm intrigued to see if he matches up against Cade Cunningham. I mean, he can make himself a lot of money in that matchup, man. If he can, if he can make himself a lot of money if he can really lock in.
I mean, he can because not only is he a highly touted player, but he's got a good team. Because at the end of the day, in these big high profile matchups, a lot of people remember, okay, but who got the W? We may talk about who had more points, who had more assists, but who got the win? Who made the winning plays? Sorry, go ahead.
Remember what Lonzo Ball did for De'Aaron Fox's draft?
I mean, come on. Yeah.
There were people saying draft De'Aaron Fox #1. That wasn't happening. Before, he obviously played ball twice that season, but after that second game when he dominated him twice, it was like, oh yeah, this guy's
a surefire top 5 pick. And I'll be honest, I don't know if that happens if they don't play UCLA in the schedule. Because there are a lot of people who did have doubts about Fox. So I 100% agree.
Smith.
Yeah.
We were talking about other guy, Frank Ntilikina.
Yeah.
And Fox vaulted into that false ball tier after that game.
Yeah.
So
no question.
This could be a potentially big game for Springer if that arises.
No question. No question. Speaking of guards, my second pick, Dosunmu, guard out of Illinois, another guy who, if things go the way we hope or expect, could be seeing Cade Cunningham down the stretch. Dosunmu, I mean, he has the moniker as the best closer in college basketball, and we've seen the last 2 years him hit a lot of really big shots. He's a big-time player. Shout out to Chicago. We know there's been a good recent history of Chicago guards and how they do in the NBA and the NBA draft. Dosunmu, first thing stands out, physical size. 6'5", extremely long arms, chiseled, really done a great job on his body. So physical profiles were 100% there to play in the NBA. And he's a guy that has shown an ability to take over games when the games have gotten as tight as they've been. Illinois is kind of a weird team. They're super talented, but I feel like sometimes they don't always play the smartest. I'll be honest, I'll throw Ayo in there too sometimes. But it seems like when the chips get down, they really need a bucket or they really need a play, he's going to be in the mix somehow. Whether it's going to be a defensive play, whether it's going to be a bucket, Dosunmu it always seems to be in the mix. I always say he kind of feels like a little bit of a Frank Ntilikina type prospect to me. If Frank was more aggressive, because this guy averages 20 points a game. He's a big time scorer. Shot selection sometimes can improve. I think sometimes he settles for shots, especially given he has a moniker as a big shot maker. I think sometimes his shot selection can be up and down. But you talk about a guy who fills a stat sheet. I mean, he averages 6 rebounds a game. He averages 5 assists. He's a guy that just does everything. He's not just looking to score. Dosunmu, one of the best players in the country. I think a surefire first-round pick and a very, very important player to watch in March as Illinois. Certainly one of the favorites to maybe win this whole thing.
Yeah, Io's a very interesting prospect. I feel like, look, he was a big recruit coming out of high school, obviously, and could have left as a freshman, but made the, I think, right decision to stay his second year. Could have left as a sophomore and decided, I want to win at Illinois. He could have, and that was more of a personal decision. He would have been drafted last season. So he's kind of like having an NBA point guard at this point. Normal college basketball terms, like he's only a junior, but it's like having an NBA point guard, playing college basketball. So it's gonna be interesting to see how teams wrap their head around. All right, he's been here 3 years. He's probably the best point guard in college basketball, but he's not a freshman, and that's always a question when you have these guys that. But what is he, 20, 21? It's not like he's ancient. So to me, we've seen mature prospects have been a lot of the best steals in the late first round, second round in recent years. Those guys who are veteran guys. Um, my second guy, I'm staying in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm going with Jaden Springer's teammate, Dion Johnson, 6'4" wing, hyper athletic. He's going to be in the, along with Greg Brown of Texas, he's, a top 1% athlete in this draft. Very raw offensively, and people love Dion Johnson's, prospects when it comes to the NBA level. As a college player, he's a solid player. He's had some really good moments where he has some games where he breaks out, and certainly some highlight reel kind of plays, but certainly not a superstar in the SEC. Wasn't a McDonald's All-American per se, but there have been people since he enrolled at Tennessee that thought, I know people think this kid Springer was a big recruit, but Dion Johnson's the real NBA prospect of that recruiting class, and he's shown moments where it has translated. I do think some of his draft hype, I think some of it is still stemming from the reputation coming in as being the super athletic guy that's gonna wow people. And he's had moments. I just wonder if he's a little too raw for the NBA game. I'm not necessarily as, bullish as some people are on Dion Johnson. I think he would be a better play in the mid to late first round where you're talking about him going to a playoff team and being in a development system. He's in the mold of that. It's really tough to actually find a comparison for him, but he's very just a super wiry, athletic player.
What about the guy? I want to say Terence Williams from Louisville. Is that his name?
Oh yeah, Terence Williams. Oh man, that was a
throwback.
That's a throwback. Yeah, that's an interesting comp. Terence Williams was more mature because
I'm thinking about a younger Terence Williams.
Yeah, Terence Williams was stronger, but in terms of his, strengths and weaknesses, like very similar. I like Terence Williams. He's not as tall as like a Gerald Green, but similar kind of game and athleticism, and skinny. Again, not as tall as like, and he's only 6'4", so like imagine a 6'4" Gerald Green or a 6'4", Andrew Wiggins type of guy. That's what Dion Johnson is, but the ceiling is so high because he's so athletic. He's one of those types of prospects. So I can see why teams are kind of salivating over having a guy who has some of these baseline skill sets, but he turns the ball over a lot, shoots it at a very poor clip, under 30%. So those are the questions with Dion Johnson, but certainly going to be a guy that's drafted in the lottery. And so if your team is going to have a lottery pick, you maybe wanting to pay attention to Dion Johnson in March.
My last guy for this section here, this region, Ron Harper Jr. Obviously, you guys, if you watched the Last Dance, and you may remember Ron Harper, who played with the Chicago Bulls. Was a longtime Cleveland Cavalier, winning an All-Star game. His son plays for Rutgers. His son has got game. His son, to me, is your typical power guard. He's 6'6". He's about 240. But he's not like fat or anything. Like he's just strong. He's a guy that uses his body, uses good positioning to get his shots off. He's not necessarily a 3-point shooter, but he's a crafty scorer. He can score in the mid range. He can score at the rim, and I've just loved his leadership at Rutgers. I feel like he kind of came in and immediately was a difference maker. He immediately was looked at as a guy that they're looking to build their program around. He didn't seem to shy away from that. It was unfortunate they weren't able to make the tournament last year when they had a great season. This season, I feel like they got beat up by that Big Ten schedule. Harper still had a really great season, and he improved on almost all of his numbers from last season. I think Rutgers getting away from the Big Ten may be a team to watch in this tournament, given some of the matchups that they have. And if they do play well, it's going to be Ron Harper's going to be a big reason. But he's got the NBA pedigree. The physicality of the NBA game won't necessarily be something he has to, get over. I think the athleticism of the game, perhaps, he's not the fastest or not the most high leaping, but he's a really strong player and a winner. So I want to give a shout out to Ron Harper in this class of prospects here.
So my last guy, going to the American Conference. Obviously I'm a Memphis fan, so not super excited to talk about the Houston Cougars, but after the way they beat us twice in the last week of the season.
Those are the
But
breaks, man.
those are the breaks he did. But but as someone who's watched this guy's games very closely in the last two and throughout his career, Quentin Grimes from Houston is somebody that I think a lot of even NBA draft people have been very familiar with, considering he came into Kansas as
they thought he'd be in the NBA by now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's no reason for him to be in college, given his high school profile. But obviously, look, he had a tough freshman season at Kansas, and decided to transfer to Houston. Had a pretty good second season, but still wasn't like a superstar. And decided to come back for his junior year, and now, I mean, he was the American Conference Player of the Year. To me, when you watch Quentin Grimes, like coming out of high school, it was clear, guy 6'5", athletic, can handle, make plays for other guys. Got to Kansas and, got a little lost in the shuffle because, look, he couldn't shoot the basketball. And he's a guy that needed the ball in his hands, and that's just not a good recipe at Kansas.
Yeah, I thought his one-on-one game wasn't nearly as advanced as maybe a lot of scouts thought it was, because he was having trouble beating people off the dribble.
Yeah, 100%. And so, I think him going to Houston, one, it allowed him to have the ball in his hands more. And we saw that last year was why I think he was better. But the real jump that's turned him into, in my opinion, a legitimate first-round NBA prospect is the jump shot. I mean, he is one of the best shooters in college basketball. He's been one of the best shooters in college basketball this season. Shot over 40% from three at a high clip, high volume. To me, he's a guy that is a prototypical NBA shooting guard. He's gonna be able to fill it up, given his athletic profile. He has the same skills and athleticism and playmaking ability that he had coming out of high school, but now the jump shot is there, and now he's in a more comfortable situation at Houston, where he can be the guy instead of being just a piece with a bunch of other 5-star guys. I think he's been excellent for him. The only question I have with Quentin Grimes is that he goes to the NBA, like, he's not going to have the green light that he has at Houston. It's a much different role. He's not going to be asked to be a go-to guy offensively. He struggled at Kansas being a role player. What will he be at the NBA level? But if he can, be a better catch and shoot guy, because I mean, look, off the dribble, he can kill guys in isolation with his jump shot. He's excellent creating space. He's got deep range at this point, in the gym range. But it's just going to be about, all right, catch and shoot. Can he lock in defensively? It's going to be a different role. But from a tools and traits perspective, to me, Quentin Grimes is one of the best shooting guards in this draft. Somebody I would even consider a lottery guy. He's not going to go that high, but I'm high on Quentin Grimes.
Yeah, Grimes' transformation as a shooter, to me, is all the difference. When he got to Kansas, he was an average shooter. Now the guy is he's a guy that you can't leave open. He's a guy that you gotta, as soon as he crosses half court, you have to be up on top of him, and that opens up so much more of his game. And what I like about Grimes is I like the idea of a guy who, came into college all world, didn't work out as well for him, decided to transfer. People argue, oh, should you transfer, not transfer. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the development of his game. And he went to another school, and he played pretty well last year, but still there was a lot of improvement that needed to be had. We saw it wasn't just all Kansas that was the issue. And you see him come in his junior year, really become a star player, really become everything for Houston, not just as a scorer, but as a rebounder as well. And this, he deserves a lot of credit. A lot of these guys, we write them off and they're freshmen, they don't do as well, but they're young players. For Grimes, I think he showed a lot of basketball character to become the player he's become, because a lot of guys would have blamed it on everybody else, maybe left early thinking that it was the NBA was the answer. Yeah. He actually stayed in school and made himself a better player, and now he may have a first round ticket to show for it because of the work he did. Had he left early, he would, no way in hell would he have been a first round pick.
Similar to Dosunmu, Quentin Grimes is going to be a player that, if you're looking at a guy who may go late first round that is really getting a lot of minutes as a rookie, because of the maturity factor to his game. You know, again, we've seen the older prospects because they come in, typically more high IQ players just because they've seen more, on the basketball court and they have a little bit more experience. They're a little more experienced. Like those guys tend to be more NBA ready, and so a guy like Quentin Grimes or a guy like Dosunmu, both these guys in this region, those guys feel like plug and play kind of NBA prospects from day one.
Absolutely, and that's going to be fascinating with those two teams, Houston, Illinois.
And yeah, and Grimes also feels like a guy who can carry his team deep into the tournament.
Absolutely, he's also one of those guys that I think if you're pinpointing who are players that can take their teams on magical runs, I think that Grimes definitely fills that category. What do you guys think of these 6 players that we named, 3 each from Kendall and myself? Do you agree with those assessments? Are there other guys you would like to discuss in regards to players you're watching as NBA prospects in this region? Make sure you guys leave a comment. If you like the video, of course, give us a like and subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. That's Kendall. I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.